Glad I've already had a couple coffees. Ashley, Sarah, as promised, we usually kick these off with what your coffee ritual is. So I'll go first. I'm drinking drip coffee at Industrious in Union Square right now in New York. Where are y'all? What's your coffee situation?
Go ahead, Ash. I am just drinking a drip coffee as well. I just had a baby 2 months ago, so we're in a Keurig moment right now. It's all about convenience, but definitely get a cup of coffee in as soon as I can every morning. And I'm in Chicago, or I'm in the suburbs of Chicago.
Nice.
I'm on my second cup of coffee actually today, but I had I already had a cold brew with some almond milk. Is usually my go-to, or if I'm drinking warm, like an almond milk cappuccino. I want to get fancy. I'm in Chicago. I'm in Lincoln Park and currently at a co-working space in the city.
Nice. I used to live in Chicago. I think that's now come up a few times on these coffee chats. So it's really cool to talk to y'all. I feel like any physical references of places you make will warm my heart, take me back. But let's get into it. So Ashley and Sarah have launched a marketing firm that really helps people build an awesome brand. And previously, they were early at Foxtrot, which a lot of people on the call may have heard of, and helped them build what has become really an awesome brand and a really interesting business model in the convenience and kind of delivery space. So would love, in y'all's words, just what is Foxtrot as a starting point, and then from there we can get into y'all's background and what got you to Foxtrot.
Yeah, so Foxtrot is a modern convenience store that has retail locations as well as on-demand delivery. So think under an hour was usually the promise that we made. And there are now 25 to 30 locations across multiple cities. When I started at Foxtrot in 2018, we had 4 locations in Chicago, and the business model was split about 50-50 between retail and delivery. And then by the time I left, we were at 25 across 3 cities, which was a really fun ride to try to build. But, the brand itself was really all about discovery or is really all about discovery. So think new brands, local brands. We always considered ourselves as a launch pad for emerging brands to get their story out there, get their products into customers' hands. And we spent a lot of time telling the stories of those brands across the Foxtrot channels.
Cool. And how did y'all end up there? What's the quick bio?
Yeah, so for me, I lived in Lakeview near Southport and Belmont, for you will. And I was walking down the street one day and there was a function that was under construction. I had never heard of it before. And I looked it up and it seemed like a really interesting concept, like something that I had previously been a buyer in apparel. So I was looking for an interesting role. I never considered grocery, but because it was really trend focused, it was interesting to me. I met with the co-founder Mike, and he sold me on the concept. I sold him on the fact that if I could buy men's jeans, then I could buy food too. And the rest for me is history. I was employee number 9, so it was super early days prior to me joining. Mike had been choosing the products on his own just by having amazing taste, and I really put a strategy behind what we were choosing. And yeah, the rest is history for me. So for me, I came on as employee 15, I think is what we say. I had historically been at mid-sized companies, but always rooted in technology. So Grubhub and Seamless when they had merged before the dates of Door and Uber Eats. I worked at Curs.com. And then Foxtrot, I just walked in one day and I was like, "Oh, this place gets me." And I wanted to be a part of something that seemed like consumer. So it was exciting to feel like not only was I passionate about what we were selling, but that I was the end consumer as well. So Ash and I both spent around 4 years there, and it was a super exciting time building the brand from Series A investment to Series C, from I think 1 or 2 stores to 23 by the time we left in 4 different markets. So we learned a lot along the way.
And for someone who has not come across the brand, I encourage you to just Google Foxtrot and pull it up. I think you'll immediately see that there's something special going on there. So To get into it, I'm curious what the ethos behind the brand was and how you guys thought about branding when you were helping Foxtrot build theirs.
So the ethos of Foxtrot was this whole idea of curation and discovery. So that it was a place or a destination, not only as a modern convenience market, but this place that you could really find what was new and fresh within the food and beverage market. And we're super passionate about food, changing the way that people ate and drank, and being on the precipice of what was new and next from a cultural standpoint. And so what was really fun, especially as an ex brand or as a brand marketer, is that Foxtrot really believed in investing in brand with a capital B. So really putting the energy and attention into not only what we stood for, which was reflected within every product that we picked, how we talked about ourselves, where retail perspective, but also in the partners that we chose, where what we stood up for our brand DNA. And we were just super thoughtful and protective, right, of our look and feel, and making sure that as we grew that we didn't get diluted for what we stood for. And that it was just essentially a bigger version of discovery and curation and a connection with community and food. So as we started to build our own brands, not just a private label brand with an umbrella, we use that same principle, whether that was an own brand, a partnered brand, or one that didn't even have the Foxtrot brand. And we would always start with strategy first, make sure that we were super aligned to what our path was, and then our projects would fall beneath that. So I think a lot of brands that are growing tend to fall into two buckets, right? Really brand led businesses and growth led businesses. And one is not better than the other necessarily. In our case, we were a brand led business that focused more on how we organically grew than growth hacking idea. So it was a fun to be a part of for sure.
That's all really cool. And I'm curious, at any point, what were some of the kind of learnings along the way of where the brand needed to change or shift from the early days? Because I feel like I remember when Foxtrot first launched, I was living in Chicago and the focus was very much around, as I remember it, like convenience and speed. And it felt like to me, the brand became more the curation, which you're talking about. I'm curious if there were ways you guys could identify where you needed to take the brand and how you settled on what it ended up becoming.
I think the space in the delivery space became very crowded very quickly, especially with COVID, right? So it was really the differentiator for us. We had all of these products that other delivery services either couldn't offer because of logistics standpoint or hadn't found yet. And that's why we really leaned into curation and discovery versus speed. And I think that's something that any brand can really start to think about and use. What are their differentiators? We've seen there's always going to be somebody with more money than you, with faster technology than you. What are the differentiators that no one else can do? And in the case of Foxtrot, what no one else could do was discover these amazing brands and products and then tell the stories in a way that made customers want to come to a convenience store as a destination.
So I'd love to dig into that because it feels so okay, you identify like here's our unique angle. Here's what we're doing that's different than everyone else. How then do you think about or what frameworks would you use of then executing like okay, what is the brand then and how do we build it? If we know that this is our differentiator, how do we express that?
So I think there's an art and a science to the way that we run our business today in Foxtrot, right? So I think some of it's just gut, where you're like, this feels like us. This is a worthwhile investment. There's a lot of tricks along the way where that was a really bad call and like was not opportunistic for our business. And we like using customer data, right? So what was it's the blend, right? So where from a social engagement and how people are talking about us, but also what were people buying, purchasing, and gravitating towards, and knowing where to double down in your business. Ashley can talk a little bit more about the merchandising strategy specifically, but from honoring your DNA, I think it's just how you kind of, you're always like, we're building our own lane, right? There was a million other people in the market doing something like same, but different. But we always felt like we're building our own path and tried to put blinders on. And when people ask who's your competitive set, we're like everyone and no one, right? It was every single coffee shop had every single corner and every single delivery service. And if we got caught up in what they were doing, then we never would have been building our own path. So I think it's like staying true
Mm,
to the heart of what you've built on and what feels right for you. And you start to know, right? Like when you get the ick on something and it's just not for your business. And then the things that innately everyone's excited to work on and it feels right, that usually translates to customers too. So when it felt forced, we were like, this isn't going to move the needle and no one's going to be excited about it. And you just put pencils down. Like a good example is we piloted a program called Up and Comers that celebrated the next generation of business owners on shelf, and it celebrated uniqueness, everything from packaging to what your unique story angle was, and really just celebrating the heart of what Foxtrot was, and started to build more credibility for us of something that we were always doing, but then defined it through like a marketing and branding perspective. So, and then that now has gone on for 4 or 5 years to become a brand defining product that people look out for. So it's a lot of trial and error and just trusting is your business and your customer. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more on like the revenue or data side, since that was more of your. Yeah. So what we would do on my team, the merchandising team at Foxtrot, we would dig into sales data on a weekly basis. And what we were finding is that regardless of the category, new emerging brands were popping to the top of our category rankings. So it was very
mm,
clear that customers were coming and buying these products that were new to the market, even if they were more expensive. So we carried late Doritos, we carried several brands that you'd heard of, but what was popping was the latest chip on the market or the most interesting flavor of ice cream from a Jenny's versus just even we carried Ben and Jerry's ice cream. That was selling, just not to the same level. So as we started to see that trend in the data, I worked really closely with Sarah's team, the brand marketing team, to start to really elevate those stories of new brands that were coming to the market. And then we just saw those sales increase even further. So we took data we already had, found what was working. And in the case of Foxtrot, it was unique new items. New items were driving 10% of the total volume of the brand and just told those stories. In only way that
that's
told those stories only way that we could, that it felt. Yeah. Like.
really interesting. I mean, I would have assumed I was outside looking in, like people get their staples and it's the same thing over and over. It's fascinating that you even saw in the data early that people were actually buying the unique stuff and not the, oh, I know I like this. I'm going to get this. That's a pretty cool insight.
One thing I would add is I think we locked to my team pressed really hard for exclusivity too, right? When the team was negotiating on shelf, because to only get it at Foxtrot or this is the only destination for this thing. And the culture of like LTOs and people wanting that exclusivity piece, we would really market the hell out of that to be like, even if our non compete was a month, it was like we had a month for that runway and we were excited to say start here, go anywhere. If Whole Foods was secretly shopping at Foxtrot, we're like, that's great. Like we would love you to start here. And then in 5 years from now, you're in Target because it's like we are your foreground. We could give you 10, 20, 30 brands that started on Foxtrot shelves that are now in mass retailers. So I think this idea of being able to be this place that new brands like start to find their footing, and that helps to build that organic relationship with those brands because there was like a gratefulness on both sides. So this feels right for both of us. And so then our customers would see that too and how we talk to them.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think that highlights what we were talking about before the call, which is getting on the shelves as a topic, which I would love to touch on a bit later after there's kind of two things I think actionable for meal delivery businesses here. One is your brand building, and then second, getting on a shelf somewhere. So just putting a flag in that for everyone listening. Stick around if you want to hear a few tips at the end from experts who filled Foxtrot's shelves. So back to identifying what's unique about you and really building a brand around it. I'm curious if you were to if Andy and I were running South Fork, which was Andy's meal delivery business in Atlanta, and we were left wondering what really helps us stand out and how do we build a brand around it? What would be the steps you took to help us identify that and figured out what we really needed to lean into as a meal delivery business?
So usually what we do when we work with brands is we look at the category that they're in, the competitive set. Who else is out there that's doing something similar to you? And what are they saying their differentiators are? So just go down the list. Speed in this case, right? Type of product, price, promises that you're making, gluten-free, non-GMO, etc. I like to see where you're standing out from them in that set. We also set up what we call like a T chart, and just on the vertical axis is usually price, and on the horizontal is like level of innovation, and plot you versus everyone else and see where is the white space. That can really help when you're starting to think about positioning yourself against the competitive set. And then I usually do that work up front as well as dig into your data, what's working, what's not, and what you already have. And then I pass the torch to Sarah, who can talk through what her process looks like in positioning your brand.
Yeah. So I think Ashley, our process, like Ashley's plan is what's the business and market opportunity, right? So that's a blend of the category itself, your audience opportunity, market conditions, like is there inflation right now? Like what are people willing to spend on a donut today? And really thoughtfully, even if you're in market, we think this is an important exercise to optimize your brand to make sure like that the opportunity or that we call it in white space circle is big enough for you to own fully, right? And once you're like, yes, I've landed, I'm sitting here and here on the access, then you start to think about like, how do I talk about myself or what makes me unique and how do I start to position myself? And that's where we do a lot of work on like finding like why, right? What's your unique selling point? You've probably heard a million different brand people say like mission, vision, values. Everyone has a different name for it, right? But really unearthing your reason for being and what you're uniquely bringing to the table. We line it up to say what guides you internally, what brings you to work every day, and then how does that make you in the market slightly differentiated, right? What's the thing that you're going to say that makes somebody feel like I'm going to choose your bagel over the guy next door? And then once you really have landed that positioning, then you can start to build either an edited or optimized brand identity, right? That goes back into the white space too, lining yourself up against everybody else to make sure you don't look and sound the same. And then to that point earlier is like starting to trust your gut, right? Like if, in most of the cases, I assume of the people on this call, like you are your brand in some ways. Your brand is a reflection of you. And so just living that through your tone of voice, how you make the content every day and what you bring to the table, how you interact with your customers is essentially a marketing tactic and tool. So I think it's for us, we spend a lot of time. We talk to so many clients and they're like, can you just figure out our go to market? And we're like, sure. But do you fundamentally know what your brand is? Do you know where you're sitting, right? Because innately you always end up doing that work anyways. We're like, nope, you got to go back to the drawing board because a lot of people can't tell you in 3 sentences or less what they stand for. And so I think pressing, and we work a lot of people because you're so close to your brand too. And for us, we just provide a little bit of that unique point of view to say, step back for a second and really think about what you're building. And then the marketing starts to trickle from there because it's easier to talk about your brand when you know who you are. And that could change too over time, right? Like to the Foxtrot example, they were an alcohol delivery service first, and now they're an omni-channel marketplace in 4 different markets. So it's okay for that to evolve and change based on what you're seeing from your responses to and your customers. All right, that's long.
Right. No, I think it leads to my follow up because we were talking about too, like you guys were just joking with Andy and I about like, you can really only do so many things, right? As a small business, something all of us, the two of y'all, us at Bottle, everyone on the call knows, like, you just can't do it all. And y'all made a comment, like, you should really focus on 2 channels. And I'd imagine that the brand kind of direction and mission, vision, values you pick will influence the channels that you choose as well. So I'm curious if y'all like, what's your kind of reasoning or mindset behind that comment that was like, lean into what's working and focus on 2? And how do you even know that those are the right channels for what it is that your brand stands for?
Do you want me to take this, Ash? Yeah. I think for us, right, even for our business that we're building, right, we started 6 months ago. Candidly, we were like, we're not doing an Instagram. We're never been the people that are like that active on social media and we don't feel comfortable. And then as we started to get to know our audience, right, and know we're a service-based business, people want to hear from us. They want to know how we think. They want to know who we are and why we're credible. Immediately, we couldn't avoid it anymore. We were like, we got to be on Instagram because that's where our clients are, our potential opportunity is. We need to be a part of this. And as much as for us, our 2 channels are LinkedIn and Instagram, right? It plays like when we give more, attention to what, but really that's where we invest our time and attention because that's where we know our audiences and we've seen the best responses and inbounds from. for other people. And candidly, we're like, we'd love to get into email, right? But we just like cannot take that on right now because we know we want to do it well. And so I think you just have to find a blend of where are you seeing inroads? If you've done that work on the upfront and your market opportunity, where is your customer, right? And then really thoughtfully thinking about how you can make those two channels work harder for you. Like we are Google Doc gals, like we have content calendar now, even for our business, there's two of us, but it just helps you hold you accountable too. Because we would always say, oh, we're going to post today. And something innately we see from our clients all the time, like operationally, it's always going to take the front seat over marketing. And I think when you have a plan and you stick to that plan, then you start to be like, oh, I'm nurturing this thing. And then you become good at it. And you're like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. Or you'll be like, hey, I'm not really seeing the feedback loop I'm wanting to hear. Maybe I need to shift my attention to another channel or another opportunity that make it better for me and my business today where my customers tend to be. So it's like a little bit of tinkering to see what works and what doesn't, but also that commitment to focusing and just not we always say progress over perfection, just like do the thing. And it's okay if it's not tied in a bow. Examples like I posted a reel last week and watched it, 1,000 people have watched it and like, oh God, I would have done it so differently now, but
Right.
I'll use that in the future to guide the next piece of content I create. Like it's behind us now. It's more of a positive. Oh, we can reach 1,000 people. Let's take that as a win and now use that as an opportunity.
Yeah. I also know that as an extension of that, definitely the algorithms reward consistency. And if you're consistently posting, you have a better shot statistically, this is proven out, of Instagram boosting you, LinkedIn boosting you. So there's real truth to that, like sticking with your calendar as well. Were there any, oh, and by the way, everyone listening in, feel free to throw in Q&A. We will ask questions as they come up as well. So if you have any questions for Ashley and Sarah as they come up, please put them in Q&A and we'll get to those throughout the call. Were there any interesting things about marketing back at Foxtrot that kind of surprised you in terms of what worked and what didn't?
What really worked for us were partnerships. And one partnership that was super surprising for us was we did a pop-up shop in partnership with Wilco, which is a band out of Chicago. They were launching a new album and we were just big fans and reached out to them and did a partnership for no cost. They didn't ask for anything from us. And what we did is we took over one store with specific products to them, a non-alcoholic beer, a merch line of t-shirts, hats, etc., and a cereal because they were huge fans of the cereal for some reason. And we saw a huge response, sold out of all the product online within a few days, both to a national audience as well as local, and hit a net new customer like dads, right? It was a very surprising partnership in that such a big name didn't need us to pay them, right? It was very organic and it just came alive in a really authentic way. We had a line out the door of our store before it opened. I think we opened at 3:00 and there was like a line down the block, all really fun and exciting things. And something like that was much more successful for us than paid marketing spend. We could never crack that nut at Foxtrot, but anything that was really organic and exciting, like Sarah said, if we as folks inside the brand were really excited to talk about it and create it, then our customers gravitated towards that.
And I would add to that example, like we got hits in Rolling Stone and Ad Age. And for us, that was a huge inflection point of us being a local brand that could outkick our coverage nationally, right? So you could only shop us in 4 markets where we're getting the attentions of national publications. So there's value still, right? And if you hit it well and you're still going to get that reach that you're looking for without having to be everywhere, right? So for a lot of the folks in this room, you could be just in Philly, right? But you're doing something cool enough that everybody else in the world wants to know about it too. I think to Ashley's point, we kept trying paid. You always say in other companies I worked for, we always had that one kind of ugly ad that hit, like for cars, it was like this minivan, and you were always like, it's so ugly, but for some reason it converts, right? And every brand I'd worked for always found that secret. We went through different agencies and people in the owning growth, but like paid just never converted for us. And that was just not, and the CPAs were so high that we just couldn't validate the investment there. So we just kept shifting our attention to what we call now like a community focused approach to organic marketing that felt more true to our brand. And that we saw that translation that was both high engagement and high revenue driving, which is like the perfect marketing moment when you get both. And that could be experiential. That could be thought leadership moments like the one that we're participating in now. That could be a pop-up somewhere, right? It could just be making sure the product is in high influential hands with ones that are innately organic to you and your business. So it depends on who you are and what you're like, how you define your own community. But there are ways to drive that organic growth in a highly effective way that we believe in over like obsessing about search and social all day.
I have always heard that on ad creative, that it's like the throwaway ugly ad that converts. And you spend all this time and money making something awesome, and the last ditch effort did
It's
something
true.
amazing. Yeah.
When a
It's
grammar looks like I'm just not going to look. I'm going to turn the other way. I'm going to pretend it's not in the universe. And
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I know this is a theme you all really touch on, is this idea of growth and building community. And you obviously just threw out a bunch of ideas, but I'm curious if you all were to distill like what that really means, organic growth, how you might measure it, and what are the objectives in terms of building a community, or how y'all think about it when you build a brand.
I think it's dependent on the brand. I think it's like brand metrics tend to be softer. It's like brand awareness tracking, which you can hack in different ways. You can use that through like social engagement. I would say social reach is like of the past. Like I don't care if 10,000 people are following you. I'd rather have 500 highly engaged people love you.
Hmm.
No, I think it's you just start to see a pickup of you can actually look at search from like more of an organic standpoint, right? Like from something you're doing, you see an increase to website traffic from activation, right? So there's a way, or like email capture is an easy way to start to build a harder KPI against a softer brand initiative. So I think you can make them channel specific, and then more broadly, if you own a store, like your retail traffic, inbound inquiries, things like that, you can still make them measurable. Because you just start to see the translation and like in the amount of more inbound that you're getting in that new customer subset, right? If you're maybe you max out on moms, right? And you're like, I want more like young Gen Z, like we just start to see that shift to the type of people that are talking to you too. So it's not a great answer. I think there's a blend of both soft, just understood the feeling, and then direct attributable goals to the activations that you're running. Ash, if you have any.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of just looking at your total revenue, right? How is that growing? And attributing your marketing to that. Like we can look at email conversion, number of followers all day, but at the end of the day, we're all here to grow our revenue. That's the first thing that I would look at as a business owner.
I love that answer. Just you got to look at revenue. 100%. So if paid ads were never a success at Foxtrot, at least when y'all were there, what was because I do think the main similarity in Foxtrot as an example, and a lot of businesses listening in, is this idea that it's hyper local. There's a connection to the community and trying to build relationships with people around you. So I'm curious, like, how did Foxtrot think about engaging the community or drawing people into the brand if paid didn't work?
A lot of it was in the products that we carried, right? So we were huge advocates of supporting local brands or local chefs and businesses in whatever market we were in. So before we would launch a new market, myself and my team would go out to the city and find whatever we could, local bakeries. We would talk to restaurants in the space to see if they had an idea for a sauce or some sort of product to get it out to the market. And then use those community ties, found restaurants, brands, et cetera, that people already loved in whatever city it was, and then put them on our shelves so that people would organically want to come and shop and discover other products there as well. And we would work closely with Sarah's team to accentuate and tell those stories in a bigger way. That was really our differentiator from speed of delivery or number of products on the shelves. It was items that you couldn't find anywhere else that were very much tied to the community that you were in.
We spent a lot of time drumming up anticipation and demand, especially when we entered the markets. We're like, who else can we get in bed with? We had like weeks of events for store openings. It was like local artists that were doing live installations or customizing like the back of a denim jacket in Austin, right? Like really thoughtfully about who we brought into the store for the weeks that we got there, so that we felt like we didn't just show up, especially in markets that we weren't organic to. Like we were already innately embedded in the community because we were with your people that you knew and loved because like we did our work, the work. And we did a lot of, especially with like product launches within our shelves, we spent a lot of time building up that anticipation and demand. So like something is coming, like why are you interested? Get you that drop the thing and then make a limited run of them that it felt like highly valuable. I think we always, our fun fact we like to say is like, once we got you in, it's like we had so much data on you too to be like, okay, if we got you in as a wine shopper, like you are extreme way higher value to us than if we got you in as like sort of prepared foods program because we're higher, much more likely to spend more within our shelves and spend more often. And so if we cooked you first and we'd be like, okay, why don't you buy a gift? Now you've got a bottle of wine, right? And we sort of think really thoughtfully through our customer journey and how we hit you when, whether that was date parting in our aisles, who we featured. Because like we had such a loyal, we knew like those that loved us were obsessed with us so that when we would launch products, they would follow us because they trusted us. And we built that relationship where they're like, I tried stuff that's good, then I know that it's going to, I'm going to buy this thing. I don't have to like, I'm not going to be worried that it's going to be the first time I'm trying something, it's not going to be good. So I think like that building that
Right.
trust with your community that then they could follow you for where you want to take them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think hearing that too, a big takeaway for me is how much there was in person acquisition. I mean, doing these pop ups, these collabs, and then getting those people into your sphere, right? And I know Foxtrot had a big online program and push. I think obviously businesses listening in here, the goal is to get people on a recurring plan of some kind. And that definitely strikes me as for a very local business, like it is very tactical and in person, or at least hearing y'all talk about it, it comes across that way.
Yeah, because it just was easier than like playing against everybody else in the delivery space to say download our app, right? Because it was more like we
Right.
got you now. Let's the minute you walk in the store, let's get you to download the app, right? So that you get a first time promotion, and then we have you to start to talk to you more often. So I think it's like using your store to connect to digital. Like we were omni-channel brand, and we needed to balance the business from a revenue standpoint. And so how do you use retail to drive to digital was something we always were thinking about, like from the minute you got there.
Yeah. Really smart, I think, and cool. Okay. A couple questions while we're talking about kind of marketing channels and stuff. Ariel wanted to know, how long do you lean into something in terms of a new channel before you decide it's time to move on?
Yeah, she want to take that one.
I think it really depends on your customer and how often you are expecting them to find you in whatever channel that you're in, right? So it goes again back to data at Foxtrot. We knew that customers would come into our power users would come into our store twice a month. That's how often they would shop with us. So to talk about something for only a day or even a week was not enough time to ensure that customers, even our power users, were actually seeing it. So we found that you have to repeat yourself and you have to spend more time talking about the same thing than you really want to. You are very close to your own brand and what you're saying, but not all of your customers are seeing every single point of communications or on every channel like you are. So it's just something to think about as you're building these plans and working through channels. Give yourself more time than you think and base it off of how often your customers are coming to your channels.
Yeah, I think that and that's really interesting and insightful. And I think the other like the fact that power users were coming twice a month, I think it is really interesting because too often in the meal delivery world, I think we and everyone in this world beats themselves up about if someone's not ordering every week, right? It's almost an unrealistic expectation that your customers want or can order that often. And really figuring out how you can engage with someone over the long term in a way that feels good for everybody. It's a real challenge for meal delivery companies.
Yeah.
Another,
And I think
yeah,
you
go
have
ahead.
to think about the macro environment right now too, right? People are finally starting to travel again and leave their houses and want to eat out. So that's just something we always go back to as well. It's not only what's happening within your own business, what's happening globally to set your expectations.
And I think like we were talking to a client the other day and they were like a coffee brand and they were talking about their specials and they were like, well, we're doing this month, that. I mean, we were like, let it breathe a little. Cause we're like, are you a Valentine's Day destination? Do you sell items that really people are searching for you for Valentine's Day, right? If you are, like, go for it, right? And that's your initiative for the month, and like put all your I feel like people being like, feeling the need to connect with everyone and everything. Like, just with St. Patrick's Day doesn't mean your brand has a place there. So I think that goes back to the origin of like really knowing your brand, because then you know I don't care that it's March Madness right now because my customer doesn't care. It doesn't matter to my business. And that helps you start to prioritize where you spend your time. When you do, say your customer really cares about new year, new you, like you're going hard come January 1 because everybody you sell NA and everybody wants it. Right. So I think it's just
Right.
using what you know about yourself, each customer to be like, okay, I'm going to give this legs. And when we say breathe, like a month to 3 months, even, I think it's the speed of the feed moves a lot. It doesn't mean that people are like, oh, they're still talking about why. Like it's to Ashley's point, everyone's not watching you as close as you think they are, at least in that way.
Yeah.
Because we see a lot of people
Yeah. And
like,
also,
national, like, I need to offer a special promo. We're like, enough. Like,
right.
slow down.
Yeah. I mean, on that though, of like you being in the business, you always forget everyone else isn't thinking about you all the time. So it's easy to think, oh, they're sick of hearing about it. It's no, you're just sick of it because it's your business, but people aren't aware. Like they aren't thinking about you all the time. So it's the timelines you all have thrown out are definitely longer than I would have guessed. I think it's a good reminder to stick with things. Here's another question. If not doing email or paid ads, where are you telling stories?
I think you can use email. I think what we're saying is choose two channels that are most authentic to you and your brand. So it could be email and social, or it could be email and you can pop up events if you're trying to really build a sense of community. And social would be just your own owned channels, so your own Instagram rather than throwing paid ads out. Feel free to layer on, Sarah.
No, I feel the same. I mean, you can use your website to storytell. Website's a little tough because it's like a channel, but also a platform. So it's really just like just make sure you're nurturing your website. Don't forget about it, essentially. But I wouldn't, it can be considered both. So maybe you're just like, I haven't spent any time on my website, so it's my channel right now, but obviously you have to get people there too. So I think I echo Ashley. I think you can storytell live, you can storytell within social. Social is broad, right? Like maybe your TikTok brand versus maybe your YouTube brand. Like there are a lot of social platforms, and dependent on you, your business, and your customer, maybe you're just shifting there. Maybe you have a video over just photography, or your like customer loves food boards. You're just like spending a lot of time on your imagery to storytell. So you can run the gamut.
Yeah, makes sense. So with the last few minutes, I would love to chat about the shelf space as well. I think a lot of our businesses, I'll start with a quick story. I was at a gym in Lincoln Park over Thanksgiving, and I noticed that they had prepared meals from a local vendor for sale there. And I know that's a business motion that a lot of meal delivery businesses want. They want distribution beyond just home delivery or whatnot. And as people who both help brands get on shelves and as buyers, what are things that help brands get the attention of businesses like Foxtrot, or that would help get the attention of a gym like Equinox and increase distribution across shelves at partners?
Yeah. So a lot of it will start with what your product looks like, just visually, to grab the attention of a buyer or a customer. So I would encourage everyone to spend some time with the look and feel of your product. But beyond that, quality, taste, differentiators. So what makes the product that you want on the shelf different from everything else that a buyer has seen? That could be the types of ingredients that you're using. It could be the price or the size. I mean, that's really on you and goes back to the positioning that we discussed. So you want to make sure that's very clear in your pitch. Your ability to distribute will be important as well. And data is going to be really helpful. So one thing that I always pushed brands on who wanted to be on Foxtrot shelves were, how do I know this is going to work? How do I know this is actually going to drive revenue? At the end of the day, that's really, I always talk about revenue, but that's really what retailers, gyms, et cetera, are going to care about. If something is sitting and taking up space in their environment, they're going to want it to drive sales. So you can use stats from your own D2C site. You can use stats from another retailer or an e-commerce site. If you don't have stats, then you can use customer reviews. You could use some social proof to showcase why you think your product will work. And last but not least, you want to provide support to make sure something will work. So you can, when you're talking to a potential retailer, potential client, you can talk through, I'm going to come in and sample X number of times a week. And you can tell me when you have the highest amount of traffic in your location and I will be there, or I will provide a promotion for the first 2 weeks. Sometimes we would, and as buyers, we would ask for a free fill, which is you provide free product the very first time you drop it off so that like we're not at risk and you are taking that risk. Now, if you truly believe in your brand, then you would be willing to throw that out there and prove that you can drive revenue for the buyer that's looking at your product. So there's several different variables, but at the end of the day, it's look, what's different about the product, and proof that it's going to drive revenue, I think would be the top 3 items to consider. And you want to tell all of those things to a buyer very succinctly and clearly. I was pitched thousands of times, and when someone would tell me their entire life story, love it for you, but we're hearing all these pitches all the time. So get to the point quickly and really have your elevator pitch down so that you could tell your story quickly, grab the attention of a buyer, and then tell your origin story and everything else.
That makes total sense. And how long, I know for a bit, like if you were getting into Whole Foods, it's a long drawn out process, but are there like tactics or tips for even figuring out who to get in touch with? Like who's typically doing the buying? And if you're getting so many inbound emails, like what are some unique ways you've seen people try to stand out? Or is it just write a great email is really what it comes down to?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really is going to depend on the retailer, right? So Whole Foods has a full process that you have to apply, et cetera. And even Foxtrot has gotten to that point because the inbounds were so high. You can go into a mom and pop store around the corner and you can just talk to the owner who's probably also at the cash register. It really runs the gamut, right? I would utilize LinkedIn to find who is the buyer that you're trying to talk to. I would show up at events, whether that's trade shows or community events. And I mean, in my time at Foxtrot, I had someone sell me a cookie out of a Ziploc bag. It was delicious. Like we made it happen, but they found me live. So you just have to really get yourself out there. Also, Sarah mentioned this earlier, a lot of buyers are competitive shopping, right? So if you can get on the shelves of an Equinox or a gym, right? Or a mom and pop market and look really interesting on the shelf, that buyer may find you. So don't be afraid to go after small independents as a way to build up your brand visibility, because that's the best way that you can get on a shelf is if a buyer finds you.
Little Russian doll of buying. Start at the small one and try to work your way
Yeah,
up.
100%. And like we've been talking about, amplify your brand in your own channels. So whether that's social or email or your website, you want to just be as visible as possible across a number of channels.
Makes sense. All right, two more questions before y'all go. If there's I see the question back on organic and ads, but first, what are the margins like on like if Foxtrot, what would Foxtrot buy or want to buy a meal for if the price was normally $11 sold at retail?
So our target margins were 40%. That's pretty high for the grocery world. I think typically 30 to 40% is closer to where folks would want to be. But I would just target
Yeah,
that in your mind. And one thing that we've told a lot of brands as they're building is when you're thinking about the price that you want your customer to pay, you want to actually think about what they would be willing to pay. You don't want to start with what your cost is and then build the margin on top of that for the retailer. In most cases, you're going to price yourself out of the market and you're going to be too expensive. You won't ever gain the momentum that you need. So you really want to think through back to looking at your competitors. What are the prices that are competitively out there? What do you think your customer would be willing to pay? If you're higher than them, why should they pay more? What's the reasoning? Are you clearly communicating that on your packaging? And then once you've set that, you can always go back as you scale and reduce your costs. As you get larger, your packaging can be less, even your ingredients cost will be less. But we always tell brands like it will be 30 to 40% margin that your retailers are going after, but don't just base your price off of that, of your costs. It's never a good recipe.
Right.
And customers always are so much smarter than you think. They'll know.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. And then final question, just asking, did Foxtrot or how much did Foxtrot really experiment with ads versus it being organic, and sharing a story of like articles floating around that Olipop grew organically, but also had tens of millions in. So questions like, how realistic is it, like organic works because there's paid spend behind it?
I mean, here's the thing. It's hard to find success for you too, right? Like I think organic and paid go hand in hand, right? So you start to see what's resonating in organic. You use it as a testing ground, right? Maybe your first a reel or piece of content gets your highest level of engagement. Try boosting it, right? See if that gets you like incremental conversion first. And then if that's working, then turn it into an ad. I think it's just like they play together, right? Use your organic feeds as a testing ground to then funnel things into paid versus just throwing dollars at everything. Also, you can build test models against yourself and paid and see which one you're getting better returns on. We're not the anti-hero paid. Like I think there's a place for it. Also, I think it's just dependent on your category too. And for us to try to play in a paid space against delivery was just like, we're never going to win that game. So it's like Olipop, right? And it's like a blend of the right messaging, the right creative, the right category, the right time, the right customers, and then that winning speed of ads we run. So it's not that it doesn't work or there isn't a place for it. It just didn't for us. Like we could never fully crack it enough to say, let's double down and allocate incremental budget. Like we would be playing the game of pull out, come back in again because we didn't like our strategy never fully landed and we didn't have that winning ad. But it didn't mean like at other companies I work for that isn't a place and that we don't have partners that we work with on the paid perspective. Like it's definitely a great channel to get more eyeballs like on you as you grow.
Yeah. I think to translate, I think this talk a bit, I think it's easy to look as an even smaller meal delivery business in one market versus a Foxtrot that feels like it's really big. But to Foxtrot, the DoorDash of the world or whatnot is huge, right? Like far outweighs. And so there's an interesting perspective that actually everyone's in the same boat of ultimately you're competing against the national hundreds of millions of dollars backed like major players. And I think that's where the similarities are really interesting. What y'all are saying about really thinking about the brand and community building is going to be how you acquire efficiently versus trying to compete with a DoorDash ad spend.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Or
regardless
Instacart
of
or
the
whatever.
category, there's always going to be someone who is national and has more dollars to spend on paid than you do. So it's really about figuring out what makes you different and unique, building a community around that to grow.
Yeah. Well, thank you all both so much for the time. I'm glad we got the video rolling, albeit late, but this was really interesting. If anyone would like to get in touch with Sarah and Ashley, reach out. We will put you directly in touch, but they can also be found online. We'll include a link to their marketing firm when we post this. When we post this online. Anything else? Any closing thoughts? Okay. All right.
Ash, will you
See
plug
ya.
her Instagram?
Yes. So you can also, we're working to grow our Instagram. So I'm going to put it into the chat
Perfect.
for everyone to see. I don't know. Does the chat work for everyone? Oh, this is just.
I believe so. And we will be sure to include both a
Okay,
link to your
great.
website and your Instagram in the follow-up
We
email that we
appreciate it.
send with a link to this. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. Hope you enjoyed or got a coffee this morning. And this was really fun. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Yeah. See ya.